Hey guys, Sterling here, coming at you with what might be our greatest what if story and discussion yet. Now, last week we discussed Masaki Kurisaki's insane aptitude as a Quincy, so as promised, this week's what if story and discussion revolves all around Isshin Kurosaki, as we explore what if Isshin used the final Getsuga Tensho. Now, the reason why I say this might be our best what if story and discussion yet is because it dives into so many heavy hitting questions in the Bleach world, such as the true nature of the final Getsuga Tensho. Could Isshin even use it? What would it look like for him? How strong would he be? In what scenario would he need to use this technique? Obviously, we're going to bring up his Bankai in this story, but we also touch on other family techniques and if there are any. So, like, do the Kuchikis have a sacred family technique? Is Yoruichi's cat form possibly one of these passed down techniques? Guys, we explore so much in this story. It's an absolute blast. The character dialogues, the battles, the insane story itself. You guys are absolutely going to love it. So as always, I want to thank you for the continued support. And as always, let's dive into this story and let me paint you a picture. Now, our setup for this one is pretty simple and actually a ton of fun. We just need to think of a time when Isshin would most likely use the final Getsuga Tensho. Now, I thought it'd be a lot of fun to use a young Isshin, but then once I thought about it, I thought it'd be much more exciting to give adult Isshin a larger role in the Thousand Year Blood War. So that's what we did. This story is going to take place during the Thousand Year Blood War at some time. And now the second question of this setup. Can Isshin even use the final Getsuga Tensho? For the sake of this what if, we're going to go ahead and say he can. And the story does back this up slightly because Ichigo only becomes aware of the final Getsuga Tensho because Isshin says that he asked Inetsu, his Zanpakuto, how to use the same technique, implying that Isshin either used it or could use it. So for the sake of this what if, we're going to say that Isshin can use the final Getsuga Tensho. So with that setup out of the way, let's dive into the actual story. Our location is the Royal Palace, or at least what was formerly known as the Royal Palace. The divine kingdom above Serete had been completely transformed into a wasteland of icy ruins. Desolate, destroyed Quincy architecture littered the landscape. It was now Varvelt. Atop Varvelt, a small group of Shinigami, Arankar, and humans battle it out for the very fate of Soul Society, Wako Mundo, and the world of the living. A very powerful group of Shinigami are currently doing battle with Yuha's strongest warrior, Gerard Valkyrie. An adult-looking Toshiro Hitsugaya thinks to himself, "This is fruitless. We've hit him with everything and he keeps coming back. Even my true Bankai isn't doing the job. This guy has got to have a weakness." A friendly yet gravelly voice interrupts Toshiro's thoughts. "Hey, Toshiro! Wow, you're huge! I can't believe it! Looks like you could still use a little help, though." Toshiro instantly recognized the voice. Although he hadn't heard it in a long while, this was the voice of the man he took over for. "Captain Shiba? What are you doing here?" Man, I am so excited because here we have it. Isshin has entered the battlefield. Now, instead of going with Ryukin to give the arrow to Uryu, they split ways, and Isshin decides his expertise would be most fit in the fight against Gerard. So he shows up and sees Toshiro in his adult form and is like, "Hey, Toshiro, like, you're massive." But at the same time, Isshin realizes how dire of a situation this is, and that the fate of the world is pretty much on the line in all these battles, and his son is going to fight the big main boss. So I always thought that Isshin should have been more a part of this battle in the first place. So in this what if, he actually is. And like I said, guys, this is beyond exciting because he's shown up to assist Toshiro, Kenpachi, who's already revealed a Bankai in Byakuya and whoever else is lingering on the battlefield. So obviously Toshiro called him Captain Shiba, but Isshin Kurosaki has entered the battlefield. And guys, this fight in the manga, I loved it, do not get me wrong, but I feel like there wasn't a whole lot of tension. Like, I really would have liked it if like they would have drilled home like, hey, this guy is beyond strong. He's the strongest being we have ever faced. Like, this is a huge deal. It is the end of the world. We have to stop it. Now, in the actual manga, since Kubo was rushed, we never really got that feeling. The Gerard Valkyrie fight just kind of felt like a background thing. But in this What If, it's much more important. And now Isshin Kurosaki has showed up on the battlefield to show everyone just what he's capable of. Although it was nice to see familiar faces, Isshin thinks to himself, wow, Toshiro really wasn't kidding. I guess it's time to knock the dust off Ingetsu. You ready for this one? Hey, Toshiro, you might want to step back a little. And then Isshin uttered one word. Bankai. The earth around Isshin begins to rise, forming dozens and dozens of meteor-like spears. Once the meteors were formed, Ingetsu then instantly ignited the meteors, giving Isshin control of these rock-like spears, giving him access to almost an army of meteor-like projectiles. Isshin's Bankai was absolutely insane. Toshiro thinks to himself, this must have been why he didn't use it in the fight against Aizen. It's an area of effect Bankai. And wow, look at it. He might actually take this guy down. I already have to cut back in because this is beyond insane. Isshin Kurosaki has activated his Bankai. Like I said earlier, he sees the stakes of this battle and that everyone else has already activated their Bankai. So he looks at Toshiro and goes, back up. I'm about to activate my Bankai. And guys, what happens here? This speculative Bankai of Isshin's, because obviously we don't know what his actual Bankai is, but in this story, how it works is all the Quincy architecture and earth that's around Isshin begins to rise, creating meteor-like balls, almost very similar to Pain's planetary devastation or the Getsuga Tensho. And what Isshin does is he creates all these multiple meteors around him with the landscape around him, and then Ingetsu ignites these rocks, these rock spears, turning them into flaming meteors. It pretty much gives Isshin an army of meteors at his disposal. Massive flaming projectiles that he can launch at the enemy anytime during his fight. And like Toshiro said, this is an area of effect type Bankai, and that's why we didn't see it in the fight against Aizen. Now, like I said, this is all hypothetical, but I thought this was an amazing idea for Isshin's Bankai, and I absolutely love it. Now, down in the comments below, since this is all speculative, I want to hear how you guys think Isshin's Bankai would look and what it would be and what all it would entail. That's one of the funnest things about this What If. What Ifs is speculating on things that we don't know and using our imaginations to further the ideas that Kubo put in front of us. So Isshin's Bankai in this What If is absolutely incredible, but I want to hear your guys' idea for his Bankai down below. Now, what happens next is Isshin activates this incredible Bankai where he has the meteors behind him and they're flaming, and he's like, okay, this attack has to take him out. I'm going to try to obliterate him with this. And so he tells Toshiro and everyone to step back, and he unleashes this massive meteor-like attack that at first Toshiro's almost scared that it's going to destroy the platform they're on. Isshin continues to launch meteor after meteor right at the gigantic Quincy, one after another, until none of them were left. A pile of debris completely covered the Quincy. Isshin Kurosaki had seemingly just destroyed the most powerful Shustoffel member in Yuha's army. But before any of the Shinigami could even let their guard down, a bright white light begins to shine where the Quincy had been taken down. Gerard was back and stronger than ever. Gerard begins to rampage, screaming, I am God's greatest soldier. I will not be defeated. Gerard was getting louder and louder as his body grew bigger and bigger. Isshin and the Shinigami were up against an incredible foe, and it was not looking good. All right, guys. So we have Isshin. He's just used his Bankai, and surprise, surprise, it turns out to be obviously incredibly strong, but not enough to take out a Quincy such as Gerard Valkyrie. Isshin and the Shinigami are in dire, dire straits at this point, and guys, this is where we're gonna get a little off track as far as our other what ifs go. I actually need you to help me finish this story. Now, this is how I see it going down. Isshin just uses Bankai. Everyone has tried to use their Bankai on this magnificent foe, and nothing's working. Nothing at all. So Isshin starts thinking back to that moment. That moment when him and Ichigo trained in the Bankai. And he starts talking to Ngetsu, and he's like, Ngetsu, we have to do it. Like, we don't have another choice, my friend. We have to do this. The world depends on us defeating him and getting to Ichigo so we can help. So, guys, this scene would be absolutely incredible. Isshin would look over at Toshiro and Byakuya and be like, are you familiar with the Shiba family technique? And then Toshiro obviously would be like, no, not at all. And who even knows if Byakuya would know? But for the sake of the what if, we'll just say Byakuya's like, you're gonna do it? You can't use that technique. You know what that means if you use that technique, right? And Isshin obviously knows all the consequences of the final Getsuga Tensho. He knows that if he uses this technique here and now against Gerard Valkyrie, that he will lose his Soul Reaper powers forever. For good this time. Guys, this would be an incredibly emotionally charged moment. Isshin would be doing what he needs to do for his son, for the sake of the world, for his comrades around him, and he would activate the final Getsuga Tensho. Now, the reason why I decided to get off script and have you guys help me with the end of this story is because we have no clue how this would actually work for Isshin. It's not going to work how it did for Ichigo, obviously, because Ichigo isn't just a Shinigami. He has Quincy and Hollow inside him as well. But as far as Isshin's Getsuga Tensho, I do think he would still have his own form because, like I said, he's the one that told Ichigo about it. It seems to be a Shiba family technique. So Isshin activates this, and how I think it would be very similar to the Mugetsu form, just not quite as strong. What I think is happening here, the whole basis of this technique is you're using your Zanpakuto Toe Spirit, your soul, your essence, to more or less fuel or supercharge one final form or attack. And once that fuel source, your piece of soul, your Shinigami powers per se, once that fuel source ends in fueling the Mugetsu form, then your Shinigami powers are done forever. So how I see this happening is Isshin decides like, yes, it is well worth it for me to use this form, and he activates it, and we see him, yes, do change form, but it is different than Ichigo's, like I said. I could imagine him maybe surrounded in flames, possibly, or just massive, massive amounts of Ryatsu. Either way, it would be absolutely incredible to see, and at this point, Isshin is stronger than any Shinigami on the battlefield, at least for now. Because after the Mugetsu technique is over with, he loses his Shinigami powers. So what I think Isshin would do next, like I said, this entire scene, if animated, would be absolutely incredible to see. But we see Isshin charge up one slash that he knows is going to take out Gerard. Because during the battle, Isshin's very smart. They're all very smart. I think eventually they would come to find out that the Quincy cross in the middle of Gerard's body is what's giving him the power to regenerate. And if they can destroy that, then they can destroy Gerard Valkyrie. So Isshin, knowing that, decides to use the final Getsuga Tensho, like I've said 100 times, to finally put an end to Gerard Valkyrie. But I want to know from you guys, how do you think this would work? How do you think it would work for Isshin? I want to discuss it, guys. It's one of the biggest mysteries in Bleach, the final Getsuga Tensho, and whether or not Isshin could use it, and I want to talk about it. Now, I think Isshin in this form up against Gerard would be so much fun to see. Now, Isshin launches this massive final attack at Gerard, and it being the final Getsuga Tensho, the Mugetsu form for Isshin, I believe, at least in this what if, it is a powerful enough attack. It is strong enough to wipe out the Quincy Cross, completely destroying Gerard Valkyrie. So what we have here for an ending of a story is Isshin sacrificing all his Shinigami powers for one final supercharged attack to take down the strongest Schutzstaffel member. And he is successful. But afterwards, like I said, he loses all his powers. Now, I think the ending of this what if is a lot of fun because in the original story, Gerard is just taken by the Ashwelin. There's never really an end to his character. But with this story, Isshin is the end to Gerard, and Gerard's almost the end to Isshin, at least Isshin's life as a Soul Reaper. So now Isshin can go back to the peaceful life he's been living, raising his teenage daughters, raising Ichigo, obviously, and he can just live a human life. Now, obviously, we know Isshin wasn't 100% up for it the first time, but he wanted to save Masaki. And just like his need to save Masaki, he's going to feel a need to save his fellow comrades in Shinigami and ultimately sacrifice his powers. But guys, I thought this story was absolutely insane, and it opens up so many more questions that I want to talk about right now. I want to talk about secret family techniques for just a second here, because we know that the final Getsuga Tensho was a Shiba technique, or at least something that Isshin learned from his ancestors. And I feel like a broken record, but like I said in the beginning of this story, Isshin explains to Ichigo that he had this conversation with his Zanpakuto. So it is very possible that Isshin does have access to this in the actual timeline and the actual canonicity of the story. Which opens up even more questions. Do other royal families have some sort of sacred technique? Like Yoruichi's cat form, guys. We don't see anyone else who can turn into a familiar, per se, like she does. I'm under the impression that this is definitely a technique that she learned from her royal ancestors. And it even goes to beg the question, was there ever a secret Kuchiki technique? Maybe Byakuya just didn't learn it. Maybe it was forgotten through time. Maybe all the secret family techniques besides the Getsuga Tensho, or the final Getsuga Tensho, maybe they were all lost to time. I want to know down in the comments below, do you think other families have access to secret techniques? We know that some families have access to secretly strong, overpowered Zanpakuto, so it would make sense that some of them have special Kido spells or even special sacred techniques like the final Getsuga Tensho. I find it so fascinating. I wonder if other Soul Reapers can do the same technique, if it's virtually just running out your Soul Reaper battery in exchange for more power. Could other Soul Reapers do it technically? Perhaps Toshiro maybe in the future? Any Soul Reaper. That's another thing I want to discuss down in the comments below. I know we have a ton of discussing, but that's why I said that this video, this what if, was going to be our best one yet, because we didn't just talk about Isshin's Bankai, Isshin using the final Getsuga Tensho, but the conversation we're having now is extremely interesting. So I want to continue it below. What do you guys think? What do you think Isshin's Bankai would be? Do you agree with me? Do you think he could use the final Getsuga Tensho? Do you think it would be enough to take out Gerard, like I said? Guys, I want to know. I want to talk about all things Isshin, all things Gerard Valkyrie, and all things that battle that we just talked about. This is one of those what-if animations that I would love to create with real voice actors, professional animation, all the works. Have Isshin show up, use his Bankai just like in this story, and then be forced to use the final Getsuga Tensho to finally finish off one of Bleach's strongest enemies. It would be an incredibly fun animation to see, and one day we might just make it in the future. But until then, we'll have to settle for this fun what if story that we just experienced, guys. It was a blast, and I cannot wait until the next one. Now, until then, like I said, let's keep the conversation going. Let's talk Bleach all weekend. And until the next video, guys, this is Sterling signing out.